Hello. Coming up this hour on Newsmax Now.
We've talked a lot about division in the Republican Party, but things are getting uncomfortable on the other side of the aisle. President Obama going head-to-head with Elizabeth Warren and other Democratic senators over plans for a new trade bill. What exactly has he stepped in here?
And Mayor Bill de Blasio steps out on the national stage to offer some sort of new contract with America. But does one of the original signers of the original contract with America have something to say about this? We'll talk to Newsmax Prime host J.D. Hayworth about that.
And a big Newsmax TV exclusive with General Stanley McChrystal, who led combat operations in Afghanistan. He's never been afraid to speak his mind. So what he's telling our very own Steve Malzberg.
We'll have a preview of that interview and much more coming up ahead here on Newsmax Now.
And again, thanks for joining us for this Tuesday edition of Newsmax Now.
I will start with reports now, Miranda, of 6 U.S. Marines reportedly missing after their helicopter went down in Nepal.
Yeah, dozens of people are dead after a second earthquake rocked Nepal. The 7.3 magnitude quake triggered this landslide that you see right here in northern Nepal earlier today. People could be seen running out of buildings. Much of Nepal was damaged or destroyed in the first earthquake late last month, just a couple of weeks ago. That disaster killed at least 8,000 people. And we'll try to get an update on those missing Marines as soon as we have one for you. Meantime, President Obama talking poverty today at Georgetown University.
We can do something about these issues. I think it is a mistake for us to suggest that somehow every effort we make has failed and we are powerless to address poverty. That's just not true.
Well, the president claims that poverty rates have gone down by some 40% over the past 5 decades, although a lot of Americans might disagree with those numbers. Meanwhile, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie criticized the president and the Federal Reserve in a speech he's giving in New Hampshire. Christie, who may run for president next year, says the president's policies have led to stagnant growth, if any growth at all. He says the rich are getting richer, and while the middle class is shrinking. The White House is supporting a bill now to stop the bulk collection of phone records. The bipartisan bill to change the NSA's data collection is expected to pass the House at some point tomorrow, but it's facing a more uncertain future in the U.S. Senate, where Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is backing another bill. That one would keep the NSA's programs in place for another 5 years. Also, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is also facing some pushback on a free trade bill. That new legislation, nicknamed the Fast Track Bill, would give the president the power to speed trade deals through Congress with only a yes or no vote from lawmakers. Senator McConnell says any fast track bill that goes to the House will also be matched with a workers' aid bill to help out employees who lose their jobs in the Senate. But we're hearing that a group of Democratic senators have now started to move to block that version of the bill. Also, new rules for how the Pentagon is buying weapons may have been written, at least in part, by the weapons makers themselves. Politico says a bill sent to pass this week in the House to reform weapons buying procedures shows some striking similarities with the wish lists of defense contractors. One lobbyist says some of the provisions were word-for-word adaptations, but House Armed Services Committee Chairman Mac Thornberry disagrees. He says a lot of people had input on the process.
Ex-NFL star and convicted murderer Aaron Hernandez faces new charges today. Boston prosecutors are accusing Hernandez of shooting a man in the face 2 years ago. That man lost an eye. Hernandez is already awaiting trial on charges that he shot and killed 2 other men outside a nightclub back in 2012. The 25-year-old was recently sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Odin Lloyd. Things are slowly getting back to normal today on the University of California campus at Santa Barbara. Last night, 3 people were injured in a shooting near the campus. They were taken to a hospital. One of them is a suspect in that shooting. Police are investigating whether drugs were involved. The campus was locked down for about an hour. 4 people accused in the deaths of 2 police officers are in a Mississippi courtroom today. Both Marvin Banks and Joni Calloway face 2 counts of capital murder charges. Banks's brother Curtis is charged with accessory to capital murder after the fact, and Cornelius Clark faces charges of obstructing justice. Yesterday, police officers from around the country gathered to remember officers Benjamin Dean and LaCorey Tate at a memorial.
To Officer Dean and to Officer Tate, you will always be my brothers.
We're going to take care of his family. And that's what I want him to know. So, and that's really it.
Officer Dean will be laid to rest Thursday morning. Officer Tate's funeral is set for Saturday.
And we want to welcome to the set here J.D. Hayworth, host of Newsmax Prime. J.D., good to have you with us.
John, Miranda, I'm honored.
Oh, always our pleasure.
All right, a couple of things we want to talk about, maybe three things if we have time, J.D. First, we want to start with that new Pew poll about Christianity in this country. It appears to show declining rates of folks who identify themselves as Christian. And on the inverse, more folks in this country identifying themselves as non-Christians or non-religious. Do you think this will have an immediate impact on the campaign trail?
I'm not sure it'll have immediate impact other than to, I think, for a lot of traditional Americans, people of faith, to go, my goodness, is this really transpiring? And the direct numbers, Christianity responders dropped by 8 percentage points to just 71% of the population. So I think it will have an effect, but long term, when you take a look at the number of Muslim refugees or immigrants that are being brought into the country under a heightened program by this administration, that is also adding to the aggregate, not just agnostics, but people with a different faith and value system.
And we know the appeals that have been made by Mike Huckabee, Ben Carson, the list goes on and on. Interesting when you look at it with this number, because polls, hard to tell, but sometimes they do have an impact on the conversation. Another thing we want to talk to you about, too, was Bill de Blasio and his attempts to step out on the national stage. And I know Politico covered this today, but I was reading an article in The Atlantic, and they may have summed it up, perhaps the question best, by asking, quote, why is the mayor of New York, after less than a year and a half on the job, jetting around the country to promote an agenda that has already been taken up by more experienced, in parentheses, Bernie Sanders, and more popular, in parentheses, Elizabeth Warren, national leaders to the left? What is he doing here?
Well, the mayor of New York, and we've seen this with Michael Bloomberg and others, once you're mayor of New York now, you think you can run for president. And Bill de Blasio is a man in a hurry. He's got an ambition to match his 6'6" height, and so he is moving forward with it. The other interesting thing is he's working with Elizabeth Warren on this, and it stands in stark contrast to the real contract with America that was drafted by House Republicans 20 years ago that I was pleased to sign on to as then a challenger for the House that gave Republicans their first majority in 40 years in the U.S. House. What Mayor de Blasio and Senator Warren, I believe, are embracing might more accurately be called a 15-point manifesto for the left, as opposed to a contract with America.
Well, before we talk about what's coming up on Newsmax Prime, we want to talk about one more topic. Jeb Bush, in a sit-down with Fox's Megyn Kelly, was taking on one of your probably most passionate topics, immigration. Take a listen.
I've been traveling over the last 3 months, and I get a sense that a lot of people can be persuaded, to be honest with you. But here's the deal, Megyn. If I go beyond the consideration of running to be an actual candidate, do you want people to just bend with the wind, to mirror people's sentiment, whoever's in front of you? Oh, yes, I used to be for that, but now I'm for this. Is that the way we want to elect presidents? Running for president is tough. Serving as president, which should be the objective, is a little harder.
Yeah, your thoughts, your reaction to it?
Well, again, he has the Bush brand name. He has any number of apologists in the establishment media. He is personally a very charming guy, and he has decided that he and Hillary Clinton both, they are going to stuff amnesty down the throat of the American people, and he's trying to turn a weakness into a strength. Is it amnesty?
Is that what he's really saying?
Yes, anything. Here, let's clear this up once and for all.
Okay.
Any mitigation, any relaxation of existing law for people who come here illegally is a form of amnesty. They're going to try to tell you it's not. They're going to try to tell you it's compassionate. But the bottom line is, and this is one of the subjects we'll take up tonight, they're trying to use the Defense Appropriations Bill, some of the open borders folks in Congress, as a backdoor to amnesty. We are seeing that Trade Promotion Authority bill, as Dick Morris warned us a couple of weeks ago, as a backdoor to amnesty. Mr. Bush is hoping people will say, well, at least he's trying to bring people in so we know they're coming, but I don't see any reason to merit that as somehow noble, saying, I'm going to be your president and I'm going to support amnesty and you're going to like me because I've consistently told you that the United States of America is going to become Los Estados Unidos.
Well, he mentioned that self-deportation aspect that Romney used in 2012. And of course, we all know what happened. Romney won the nomination in 2012.
We're running out of time.
And that's why tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern and again 8 o'clock Pacific, Newsmax Prime. Be there. Aloha.
We will be there, J.D.
Thanks, J.D.